Hi everyone, this is the breakdown of Useless 2. I just want to start off this by saying I'm not an expert at all at production. You'll probably be able to tell throughout this breakdown that I don't really know what I'm doing, but I really like watching videos on YouTube of people that don't really know what they're doing, or like probably better than me, but like aren't experts, and taking little bits of that and putting it in my music. It's so much fun, and I really love doing it. It's made me improve so much, so hopefully you guys can get the same thing out of this. I'm going to start with this vocal because that's the most important thing in the track, or like the focal point of the track. And right at the beginning, I open up with this big Reese and this vocal, and here's what the vocal sounds like.
I don't wanna keep on second guessing, 'cause guessing is useless. Keep on second guessing, 'cause guessing is useless.
So as you can tell, lots of reverb, really wet, lots of distortion on it as well. But actually the original vocal I got off Splice is not dry. You might be wondering why, and that's because my Splice subscription expired like a couple years ago. So I'm just going off the samples I downloaded a couple years ago. So they're not all like the best. Like now I would probably want to go for a dry one, but it's what I got, and I think I got a good sound out of it. So unprocessed, it sounds like this.
I don't wanna keep on second guessing.
So you can hear like a little bit of reverb, but it sounds fine other than that. I just got this big EQ on it, cutting the lows. It's pretty absurd, but boosting the mids as well, so it stands out a little more in this intro. This processing is specific to the intro, and I changed it up throughout the track. I could talk about that. We'll see where this ends up going. Then lots of reverb with a bit of decay, some delay to keep it fresh, and then wave saper, which is just saturation at half mix. I usually like to, use the mix within the plugin, but I didn't here, and it sounds fine. And then I'm cutting those lows again just to keep it nice and clean. So here's what we got for the intro.
'Cause guessing is useless. Keep on second guessing.
So you're probably wondering, how'd you make that Reese? Okay, so it's a Reese, so it's got a bunch of saws with a bunch of unison on them. I got one in octave up, and then, or one 2 octave ups, one octave up, and then I got the sub just at like the fundamental. Everything's being high passed or low passed, just to keep it nice and clean. And the higher oscillators have more detune on them, just to get that super wide, interesting sound. As you go lower down, I like to keep it nice and tight so you can hear things and you can hear the notes properly and it doesn't sound all messy. On the processing, I just have compression, distortion. Yeah, this is pretty much just OTT right here, and then some distortion on it. What I like to do on my Reeses is I'll toss a little envelope. This is in an LFO, but it's set to an envelope mode, and I'm putting that on the pitch. So that's making it go up from 2 octaves up to, or from 1 octave up to 1 octave down. So I guess I misspoke earlier, and this oscillator is actually at the fundamental with this sub. I guess it's creating a little, like, it'll be distorted a little there. Sorry, I'm just looking around. But yeah, I think that sounds great. It adds a little punchiness. That's the same way we kind of design kicks, but obviously it's on a bass, not a kick. But it's the same principle, so it adds a little punch. You can do this with your 808s as well. That's a great way to give them punch. And I like to do it with a lot of basses as well, sometimes even subs. So let's hear that. Other processing on that is just, I have this EQ here that I'm using to filter it in and out in the track. I got this balance because I guess I'm automating it. I like to use balance to automate volume rather than the mixer channels, so that way I can keep things, I can actually use the mixer volumes to actually mix rather than use a balance. And then I got some reverb on here. I think I'm automating that as well later. But that's that bass, and that's what I got there. Alrighty, now for the build up. So what I like to do in my build-ups and in a lot of things in my tracks is create space by cutting certain elements. So what that means, that was a bunch of words. What that actually means is I'm cutting a lot of elements here to create space for the next hit to come in and more interesting rhythm. So this vocal repeats, but it's cut here. The main bass cut here. The Reese cut, and then the reverb on the, I think it's on the clap or the main bass, is cut, and then the only thing that comes in during this cut is this little dry clap. So that creates even more interesting rhythm. So let's hear that right now. So what that does is it totally changes up the rhythm from the beginning. So we know something new is coming and we're building intensity. Then I also have the bass coming in. I'm just filtering it in. Pretty simple stuff. And it keeps going. Yeah. So the bass comes in the rhythm that we're getting in the drop, just to introduce it and introduce what it's going to sound like. I'm also putting some processing on the master. This kilohertz stereo, which just makes it less wide. I'm also cutting the low end, so I have a high pass filter right here. That just means when the drop actually comes in itself, it doesn't get overwhelmed by the buildup. So the buildup doesn't have more intensity or energy than the drop, just because we're cutting a lot of things that give it intensity. So we're cutting the stereo, which is a big factor for the intensity. We're cutting the low end, which is also huge. So that way when it comes in, it's got all the energy that it needs. Then for this little fill,
This program is brought to you by...
So that's just, I'm cutting the high end of the master, and then I have the sub drop. So that is when we get the low end back in. There's no other low end in the track other than the sub drop. So rather than just filtering in the low end, it actually gives it a more interesting sound, I think, in my opinion, because it actually like drops into the low end. If that's, I don't know if I'm doing a good way of it, or I don't know if explaining that really well, but that's what it is. And then I got this tag here. I really like the sound of this, and I pretty much put it in everything, which is awesome. So now let's go over the drop. So you're probably wondering how I made this bass. I'll just scroll somewhere else so I can show you the dry patch of it. Oh no, I'm a little lost here. Okay, there it is. So let's just listen to that. You might be thinking, wow, that sounds like terrible. And you'd be right. So, what that is it's this one serum just going through this wavetable. It's got this filter on it. Honestly, I saw a video on YouTube of someone doing like a tear out bass the same way. Obviously, like the processing is different, but like this bass sound is pretty similar to what someone else is doing. So that was my idea for the track. That's kind of what it got it started. And then I've got this sub as well. That's, yeah, it's what it is. It sounds like it does. But the real magic comes into the processing. So I'm gonna just put it in the drop and then solo this bass without the processing, or with the processing. So here's what it sounds like with processing. So lots of changes there, right? Obviously there's no sub, so it's not going to sound perfectly right. I'm going to turn off the rest of the processing here just to keep it, just so I can show you the difference that the individual effects are making. So we're going to turn on the first one, and what am I doing here? So there's that bass patch that you probably remember. We got this OTT because I love OTT, and it's going to bring out a lot of cool things. And then a wave shaper, saturation. These two effects are making probably some of the biggest difference in the bass. The rest of the stuff is just tuning it in and making it sound nice. So you can hear it sounds way better already, because what's happening here is the sub is being distorted with the bass, with the actual high end and mids and whatever, which actually makes it sound so much more unique and interesting, or not unique, but so much more interesting, and actually gives it that like dubstep or tear out bass sound or whatever. So if you're making basses, definitely try distorting with the sub. It really sounds interesting a lot of the time. Then I'm peaking this harmonic here around like 500 hertz. That note is actually a C, and you might have heard earlier that this bass is playing an E. So that caused a bit of problems for me because I wanted this to be on the fifth, and that's not the fifth of an E. So what I did is I cut the low end, and then I added a sub that was actually playing an F. So yeah, there might be some problems, but I don't really hear them, so I don't really care. And that's what I got for it. So that is our bass. Then even more processing. I got a dimension expander, just a little wideness, all phase pass. If you don't know what this is, it's like disperser, which is like something to do with just like changing the phase of some frequencies or something like that. But it's free. I got it off the internet for free. Someone from like Rushdown made it. I don't know the artist, so I'm sorry if you're watching this or if you're a fan of whoever made this, but thank you. It's a great plugin. Then we got this EQ. Actually, I don't know why this is there, but more wave shaper, frequency shifter because that's being automated and doing some interesting things. Now, here's this reverb, which I was talking about this earlier, cutting certain things to create space and interesting rhythm. So I can use this to talk about like the rhythm I was going for in the drop and what's happening here. So you can probably tell the drum pattern isn't super interesting, and that's for a reason. Sorry, I'm kind of getting lost here. Okay. Let me just turn everything back on so I can discuss this in detail, and then I'll keep going over the bass. The drums are not interesting at all. It's just kick, snare, with some reverse stuff, but yeah, that's what it is. So the reason I'm doing that is to kind of create an on and off style of rhythm. So you might hear it as I go over the drop, but let's listen. So what's happening here is I have the main bass played twice, like, and then these little thingies, these little cuts of it. So that's kind of where the on off is, like what I'm going for. So while these two long sustained thingies are playing, I think of it as on. So I'm kind of pulling out all the stops here and making it loud and wide. So how I'm doing that is I have a reverb somewhere, yeah, right here, that's being automated on the bass that makes it nice and wide and nice and big. And then it turns off when we have these two come in. See right there, gets turned off. Then same with these, same with these cymbals. So they're on, and then in the little off section, you know, there's no cymbal. So it's a way more dry. There's a lot less going on. Even these hats, like I have them cut out a little here, not fully, but there's way less going on. It's quieter, less wide, and that's how we have like the impact coming when we get the snare. So every single drum hit has an enormous impact, which I just love the way it sounds. So that's what that reverb is doing, which is really cool. Now I'm gonna keep going over this bass. After the reverb, we're doing more stuff, just bringing up that harmonic again. I don't know why it's like that, but, and then this ozone, I think I was just doing it to check the imaging. And then I have it coming as well. I have it sent to another channel, which is like absurd at this point. I don't really know what I was doing with that thing, but I'm just bringing the volume down a little. I think that might be automation, not 100% sure. And then, yeah, you can just see a little more processing. But the point of this channel is that the sub, which is coming from here, the sub is going into this, and it's getting smushed again. Like they're getting clipped together again, which makes it sound a little more interesting. And then also, because that sub is in F and the original sub was E, creates some problems with the mix. I was kind of hearing it a little. So just clipping them together again just kind of got rid of the problems. I don't really know why, but, you know, it did. now I can talk about the sub as well, because that's really important. So let's turn on the sub. Sorry, I'm totally just clicking around here, guys. Sorry. Where is it? Yeah, right there. Okay. If you're not wearing headphones or you don't have like good speakers, you're probably like, what did that guy just do? But I turned on the sub, and that is this patch right here. So it's just a sine wave. The envelope has a bit of attack, so that way it follows the rhythm of the bass a bit, but it still has that sustain that we want. I'm also doing that thing with the pitch at the beginning, so it has more impact. Oh, you just can't hear it. Doesn't really matter. And then distortion, compression, just standard stuff. And then it follows the bass exactly. So that way the rhythm is kept. I was gonna do a sustain, but I didn't really like the way it sounds, so I did this instead. And here's what we got for the entire bass. Wow, very cool. Okay, so what do we have next? You might have been noticing a little space in there, and that's my little neural Reese. I absolutely love making Reeses. I think when I was starting out, or like even for the first couple of years of my production, I just could not get it down. I could not get it down, and I thought like being able to make a good Reese would mean that I'm on the way to becoming good at making music. So, which is like, that's why I'm super proud of like the dubstep tracks I've been making recently. Although like I haven't been putting out many on the YouTube channel, but I'm loving the Reeses that I've been able to come up with. They're not like perfect by any means, but here's the technique I use to make them. So let's just go over this. Let's play this for you guys. Yeah, so there's my Reese. There's no sub, which I chose to do because it changed up the rhythm a bit when I'm cutting the sub and creates more impact for the next kick. I don't know if that was the right call, but I like the way it sounds. Let's just see. Let me just find the mixer channel and then, okay, I'm gonna cut the effects just to show you what it sounds like without anything. Sorry, just totally clicking around here. Perfect. Let's see. So you can see, like, sounds kind of bad. Sounds kind of bad. But what I have here is little white noise, and then the main sound of this Reese is this oscillator right here. You see the unison's at 2, detune's at like 50%. What I'm doing here to make it sound interesting, if you go into global, I'm sorry, Vital people, I don't know how to do this in Vital, but in Serum, go to global, set the width down to 0, and that way you're getting some interesting phase cancellation that changes as the pitch of the oscillator goes up, the frequency of the cancellation, and like it kind of creates a sound as if you have an LFO on the volume, but it's actually just phase cancellation, which is really cool. Yeah, super cool. I learned how to do this by watching like a virtual Riot stream or something. But this is totally not like as good. Sorry, that was not very articulate. I'm gonna keep going over the processing here. So I'm cutting this area around 300 hertz. That gives it that Reese sound. It's pretty much a staple to that type of sound design. And then I have this peaking, like low pass or high pass filter that gets automated to go up and down with that bass. Then 2 OTTs. Love OTT. Just creates some super interesting noise with that bass. And then we have chorus, which gives it a little bit of space. The chorus is actually at 0 when the bass starts and comes up to, I think I'm automating the mix. Yeah, the mix. So the mix starts at 0 and then comes to 100% as the bass goes on. that is further going into that kind of on-off pattern, or like style I was going for this drop, because it feeds into that, like it brings you into that next kick and just makes it sound even bigger. So that's why we have this reverse kick as well. I think that's pretty much everything to cover in this drop. The drums are pretty standard. I just have this little hi-hat going on triplets to follow the bass. And then after that, I have the vocal again. It comes back and it's just on the offbeat. So we have it accentuates that rhythm I have even more, but changes it up a little. So I'll actually just play it for you guys. Is everything on? Yeah. Okay. Oh no. Okay. So there's that rhythm we have again. So like on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. You know, you get it? But this really accentuates that rhythm as well and changes it a little. So we have, it would usually be wet, dry, wet, dry, wet, dry. But instead, it's like wet and then wet but cut, which just creates a little bit of a different sound. And obviously this vocal sounds great, so it's always a great little filler to put in. It keeps the drop interesting as we go and it gets longer. All right, so after the drop here, the track has to transition into a new section. So what has to happen here is the elements of the drop and the rhythm of the drop and all the energy from the drop kind of has to go away. And it has to like kind of be on hold for the next drop. You can probably tell from my tracks. I don't know how many I've posted on YouTube that sound like that have bad transitions, but like it's kind of a weak spot for me. I'm not super great at making these, but I think this one turned out okay. And that's because it's not a super standard strong song structure. Sorry, I can't speak. So what I'm doing here is, after we get the vocal that kind of plays intermittently on the offbeat throughout this section of the drop, I let it play out. It's cut a little bit to fit the rhythm better, but not really. Like, it's allowed to play out, which is this is what it sounds like here. So it plays out, and then because this vocal has been introduced in another part of the track, we know what comes next. And what comes next is, maybe I can find it. Right, the title of the track, it says useless. It says the thing. So I'm going to change the rhythm here, because the rhythm of that phrase doesn't really fit the drop or what comes next. So I'm cutting it so the different syllables of that phrase play in a rhythm similar to the bass in the drop. So I'm cutting it here to sound like this. That's how we keep the rhythm going without, the rhythm of the drop keeps going to this next part, which also has the same rhythm. So it keeps going, sounds great. And we're losing the energy from the drop using reverb. So we're decreasing the wet volume, or decreasing the dry volume, increasing the wet volume, and this cymbal as well just kind of keeps the rhythm of the kick and snare, and it gets reverbed out as well, in the same way as the vocal. So by the end of this 2-bar section, everything's all wet, and that's when we introduce this new instrument. So let's just hear this. Okay, so that's where we get this new instrument, which is, it's pretty much, it's just a basic saw patch. I picked this wavetable because it sounds a little more natural, and then we get white noise on here, and I'm obviously high passing all this stuff so it doesn't sound bad. Then compressing and reverb, and when this instrument comes in, it's super washed out as well. So the whole everything in this entire track at this moment is super wet, super washed out. And then we start to bring it back, and we bring back the rhythm that we had earlier. So let's hear that. So the rhythm is a tiny bit different than the drop. I mean, like the drums, like the rhythm in the drums is slightly different. We no longer have that triplet feel, but instead it's just a straight, I don't really know what to call this, but the drums are straight, the hat's straight. It's all really standard. It kind of sounds like a rhythm tune, but not really, but like the same style, you know, like super straight, super on the beat, and just, yeah, everything sounds like it sounds. So we have the same bass with the drop, but it's only playing half of the time. That means we can accentuate it, and then it's also being low passed, so it fits this style more goodly. That's not a good way of putting it, but you know what I mean. And then we have the vocal playing on the offbeat as well. That just has the same like rhythmic style that I'm going for this whole section. Then this little patch, it's got a delay on it now, which just fills the space a little more. This section is like not super dry, which means we can fill the space a little while still keeping that nice rhythm, which is cool. So here's what I've got for that. Okay, then you can probably tell the vocal's gonna come back in, right? So, like everything else in this song, we open it up with the phrase, I don't wanna. It's at the beginning of the song, it's here, it's everywhere. So once you hear that, you know what's gonna happen. But what's really cool is here I change it up. And I change it up by creating this space right here where the vocal is not playing. What that means is that this bass hits way harder than expected, which is awesome. I love the way this little part sounds, and yeah, here's what it sounds like. And we do it again, right? We have little introduction and then like cut the delay. The only thing that's playing is this and then the kick, and this is super heavily side chained. So the kick plays and then this bass just fills all the space. It's like a way more extreme side chain because you're not just messing with the volume of something, you're completely messing with the rhythm to create space for this bass, which sounds immaculate in my opinion. Like obviously it's not perfect, but I'm super proud of this little bit of composition. And I'm doing the same thing right here. There's no delay anymore on this vocal, and I'm just cutting it. Just lots of space right here to keep it, and like, yeah, to keep this rhythm maintained and just sounding nice. So it goes all the way through, and then we have something new come in, which is this Reese. So it's the same general principle with here, but instead of accentuating the bass, I'm accentuating the snare. So it's sustained and then a break right before the snare, which makes the snare hit harder in this section. This is introducing the general idea that we're going to have for the next drop. And it keeps going with the same like idea with the vocal, right? I'm cutting it the same way, I'm processing it the same way, and it's pretty much exactly the same. Doesn't sound super creative, but it keeps the track, keeps the track going, and yeah, that's what we got. So that gives us the energy we need to go into the second drop. Now, you probably could tell there's no build-up here. I didn't put a build-up. That's because I'm not good at making two build-ups in the same track, and I'm not good at making them sound interesting. There's plenty of people that can do it great. I'm not one of those people. It's definitely something I try, but it's not something I'm going to try on a track that I'm going to release, at least most of the time. So here's what that sounds like. Keep The only thing that's different here is that I'm removing the low pass on this bass to give the listener the idea that something is about to happen and that it's going to be big. Same thing with this. Same thing with cutting the drums and this little introduction, this little phrase here that I'm using everywhere in the track. I set up the expectation early with the intro and this, so the expectations be set, and then I start to break that expectation right here, and then right here once again. That expectation being that the rest of the vocal is going to follow, and it's not going to at this point, which creates even more intensity and interesting sound in the second drop. Alrighty, the second drop. So this second drop, because it doesn't have a build-up, I'm not going to change much as compared to like the beginning. It doesn't really need a transition because it's just kind of an expansion of what we already have in the midsection, which is not really like a standard midsection anyways. So we have this vocal come in and then the drop happens. The drums are the exact same as what I have in the middle. The kick, it's a different kick, but the snare's the same. Side chain's the same. Like the whole rhythm in terms of the drums is the exact same. The only thing that's changing is I'm cutting a lot of elements, and then I have this bass come in that's slightly different. Now the general style of this drop is more of like I was going for more like rhythmy, like less interesting rhythm and more just like the same thing happening over and over again, but with interesting things coming in and using that really basic foundation to create or to like allow myself to fill the space with different elements each time this whole pattern repeats. So the first time it's just bass and drums, and then I have this Reese come in, and then I have the vocal come in, and then I have this melody come in as well from the midsection, and then it's just eventually it's just the outro. So that lack of like rhythmic complexity and interesting things happening gives me the room to do cool things outside of that, which I'm super happy with. To start this off, I'll just talk about this little sub hit because it's an octave up. What that means is that the transition to the drop feels a little more natural because we don't have a sub before. Like we do have a sub, but where is it? So that's going to want to resolve to the F, but it doesn't really sound like it's going to want to resolve to the F. It's not going to resolve to that F. It's not going to resolve to this F. I think it's going to, it sounds to me like it wants to resolve to this F. So if we hear that just with the Reese. See, that sounds a lot more natural than the F and octave. So I can play that for you. I don't think that sounds as natural, and I definitely tried it with that in the sub. It just doesn't sound, doesn't sound as nice. So that's why it's an octave up, and then it comes down after. So here's what we have for that. So if you don't have headphones on, if you're going off your like phone speaker or whatever, you probably can't even hear it. I know I can't hear it like when I'm listening in my AirPods or whatever when I was like referencing this. But it's important, I think. That's what makes this transition feel natural. So then I'm doing that again right here just to keep the continuity and keep it interesting, because this part could get a little boring if I don't change things up a little. And then I have this Reese come in. It's the same Reese. I think it's the same Reese from here. Not 100% sure on that. But what it doesn't have is a sub. So in here, the sub is just playing F all the way along. So the bass has the harmonic at C, and then the sub is at F. So then we get that cool fifth, giving it an interesting tonality. But then things finally change up right here. the bass line changes for the first time in the song. It changes in a drop, which is like obviously first time in the song. It's been like what, like 12 bars. Not a lot of precedent here, but oops, sorry. Bassline's changing, which is keeping it interesting. And following that, we have this sub. Or not the sub, the Reese. That's coming in. It's being low passed, and then this sub here that's following everything. It goes F, and then it starts to change. Is that still an F? Yeah. But I'll show you here. It changes to a C sharp, and then that keeps going. Like it follows the bass line, or like the sub bass line starts to change, and this Reese bass line starts to change, and then it comes in, and then we have this vocal come in. So it's kind of like a full circle moment here because it's the full vocal is playing over the same bass line that we have at the very beginning, which kind of completes the track, I think. And then we introduce this little sign pluck. And if you want to see how that's made, it's pretty simple. Oh, it's the last serum I made in here. Just 2 sine waves, each an octave apart, and then a reverb. That's it. It's really simple, but it sounds nice and clean and fits the section really well. So let's hear that. So what's just happening for the outro there is that I'm getting rid of this rhythm and introducing the listener to the idea that they are not going to hear this rhythm for the rest of the song, which is, it's unique to the song because this rhythm has been going for the whole thing. We kind of got to say goodbye to it. So we're going to say goodbye to it right here by having the sub follow the Reese and then the main bass get filtered out. So that's like, saying goodbye to the rhythm and introducing the outro. So we have this little section here. Yeah, and then the drums stay the same through here. Just big, punchy drums. Or not big, but like punchy, tight drums that keep the interesting rhythm. And then we have this Reese that has the sub with it. And then the lead and the vocal all together, which is kind of a mirroring of the beginning here, just with the added things that we kind of gained along the way in the midsection. And then the tempo comes down, and what that does is gives it a kind of off-kilter feel. Even though nothing's off-kilter, the tempo's coming down, so we're slowing down a little. It's not slowing down by much, but it's slowing down by like 15 beats per minute, which changes up the rhythm a little and gives the viewer the idea that it's about to come to an end. Sorry, DJs, if you ever want to mix this. Tempo things. If you guys ever want to put this in a set, if you'd want to, huge honor. But for me, just send me like a DM on Instagram and I could send you something without the tempo change. Or if you want to like mix it or whatever, with how it is. Yeah. Where's the outro? Or where's the very end? We just have this kick and the Reese playing. So at the end, we cut the kicks. And then we finally have the kick come in this big Reese that comes up in reverb and ends the track. And that's what I have here. If you guys have any questions about the track, just let me know. Ask in the questions or ask in the comments. I also really appreciate the support on the recent tracks. It's been so much fun making them and putting out tracks on the internet again. It's not something I did for a while, and I'm really happy I'm doing it again because you guys seem to enjoy it, which is awesome. So thanks to like the 5 people who are like engaged or liking and commenting on my videos and stuff. Like, it really means a lot. I really do appreciate it. Also, like, an update for the channel, I am not going to be putting out music for the next while, I think. I have like 2 tracks that are going to be finished by December, and they'll probably be out on like Decabase, or yeah, and then I'll probably put them on this channel as well, so you guys will hear those. And then after that, it's probably not going to be anything from me for a while. I'll be like active online, I guess, but I'm just going to be busy with stuff. Like, I know what's going to happen. I know I'm not going to be putting out tracks. So that's kind of going to be what it is. But yeah, stay subscribed. I'll probably put out stuff in the future, and I'll still be working on music like I always am. But yeah, thanks so much for the support, and thanks for watching the video.